Hey there guys, Noah here, and welcome back to another Vanguard tier list. We're going to be doing a tier list specifically for History Collection. So, I'm going to be truthfully honest, I'm recording this at around like 4:30 in the morning, and there's a lot of stuff I gotta cover, and not that much time to cover it. So, let's just get into it. So, this is going to be specifically about how impactful the on-hit strides from History Collection are for each and every single clan. Keep in mind, not every single one gets the benefit of this, so there's going to be a couple of tiers. I have it listed here, where you have impactful, so these are definitely the decks that are going to get the most benefit out of the on-hit strides, and actually generate the most advantage based off of, what they already have from their previous support, plus whatever this now brings to the table. Then we have right below it has some potential. It's good, but it needs a little bit of testing to fully utilize depending on the circumstances, or maybe it's just a niche kind of thing. And then we have might as well not exist or useless. Essentially, any deck that will most definitely not use this because their pre-existing V support is like 100 times better than anything that the on-hit strike can provide. So I'm gonna not go in any particular order here, so let's start with Royals. So I'm gonna say definitely it's impactful. I think for Alt Mile this is huge because now you could essentially just do the G Alt Mile on turn 3 and then immediately go into Aerial Divine Knight from V into Crystal Luster, and that just by turn 4, and that's just really disgusting. It also helps that you could technically tech the G-Era Alt Mile into Jewel Knight and essentially further combo extend with Ashley by allowing Galblade to hit, and then you call Ashley, and then Ashley creates another attack. Very useful card overall. I definitely think that there is going to be some very impactful implications that can come from for Royal Paladin. So I'm curious to see what people will do for it. So yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. Aqua Force, I'm gonna say has potential, but it's gonna very much depend on how people adjust, because up until now, Aqua Force over the last couple of years have been primarily a ride down deck, thanks to V Savas with Lambros or X Grade 4, and now that ride down is gonna be kind of like not as viable. People are going to have to adapt by running G Savas, and I guess it's just going to depend on whether or not people just value being able to get double XL on turn 3 or not at that point. I think there is some merit to it, but I think we would need to start seeing results first before actually knowing and sure, okay, this is definitely their on-hit strides help out Aqua Force, make up for the fact that they lost ride down, kind of. Or at least as impactful of a ride down at that point, I should say. Up next, I'm gonna save that clan for last because this clan is just ridiculous. Let's do OTT. So definitely OTT definitely gets some really good benefit out of it. I think Susanoo, just based off the most recent result from Japan that happened. Also, if you haven't seen that video, definitely go check it out. But essentially, thanks to Susanoo being able to generate 2 protects, you can essentially stall out until you're ready to kill with an Ishitam turn, assuming you even go down that round in the first place, because there's a lot of situations where you could just set up and then just go Unga Bunga with the Momo or whatever the hell you want, and I think this actually definitely helps out OTT in a big way, because this has been something they've been kind of missing for a little while. Being able to have some very solid pressure early game, to a point where it actually matters. I definitely see Susanoo being the best OTT build going forward. Although I guess Battle Sisters could technically tack into Susanoo if they wanted to, but you know what? Somebody will let me know in the comment section if I'm crazy or if those people are just coping at that point. Up next, we're gonna go ahead and do Granblue. So Granblue, I definitely see being somewhat impactful, but I'm just gonna put it above Aqua Force in the how has potential. So we're already seeing results where running Giera Night Rose is actually being very helpful, because you can still run the Viera Night Rose for your bad bounty turn and still, run like a really interesting like mix between the two. So I definitely see that it has potential, but I don't know if people are going to default to doing this strategy now, or if they're just going to play how they've previously before. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, see if it's more consistent throughout the BCS season, and then if so, then definitely it might be impactful at that point. But for now, I'm going to leave it at it has potential. I'm trying to remember which one this one is. I think this is Tachi's over here. So Tachi's, I think, has potential, but I think it's also going to be very dependent on a bunch of different aspects. Like, I think it helps definitely that you can generate more excels and then just kind of just go crazy on the following turns. But I don't know how good Gaia actually is at that point. I honestly, I haven't seen Tachi's actually be really talked about in a while, so I guess we'll just see how things play out. I think it has potential. I think it's definitely going to help elevate the clan a bit, but I don't think it's outright useless. I think it definitely has a place for Tachikaze. Up next, let's do Great Nature. I definitely think this helps out Great Nature. Yes, it's not as good as V Big Belly, but I think you can still technically run a good mix between the two. I think there is a lot of potential that can be had with it. Being able to generate 2 XL2s on turn 3, and then be able to combo with Rhino plus Crayon Tiger while your opponent's still stuck on grade 2 is like downright insane. And that in itself could be problematic in the future, but honestly, given the fact that Hanali exists, I guess we'll wait and see whether or not that combo becomes a problem. But truthfully, like, I definitely think this helps out. Great Nature has been missing a lot of... Great Nature's biggest issue is that it has a really crappy early game, and now this kind of helps it out a bit, so let's just see what happens. Let's do Nova Grappler. So this is definitely impactful. Nova Grappler, even despite Hanali existing the way that it does now, it definitely helps them out. Similar to Great Nature, their biggest, like, issue was that they had a crappy, like, early game, somewhat. Not as bad as Great Nature, but right above there. And now that you can go into G Victor and then do Vic 10 and then have all of your restanding shenanigans from a mix of both the V and G era, cards, I definitely see a place for Nova Grappler to come back out of nowhere and start like taking wins out of left field. And I think that the on-hit stride definitely helps out in the long run. Up next, let's do Angel Feather. So, I think... This is a tough one. I think I'm gonna put it in... Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in. It has bottom of half some potential. I have no idea whether or not this is actually gonna help or not. I imagine it does, and I'm just not seeing it right now. But, again... I think I just want to wait and see what happens with Angel Feather, because yes, you can get protects, but then I see another issue where this doesn't help out Angel Feather as much as you would probably think. Angel Feather will still have an issue that unless they're playing a Gize variant, they have a very rough time in the early game. Essentially, you have to play a Gize variant with Angel Feather at that point to actually build up some sort of aggression. Kinda. It's just very dependent on what the build is. And I just don't see a world where it's impactful to that extent. So I'm going to say it has potential, but it's going to be at the bottom of has potential at that point. Let's do a Dark Zone Nation. So let's talk about Pale Mode. I definitely think that... I think it's going to very much depend on whether or not Nightmare Dolls is still in the meta. Because Nightmare Dolls is still a very solid deck. Yes, they won't do Ride Down now, but I don't think it matters too much. Like, yes, on-hit strides are going to be very annoying, and it's going to help deal with the ride down problem. But Nightmare Dolls is still a very solid deck, even regardless of the circumstance. Even if we're talking Harry, like, yes, it actually does help Harry, but I don't know if people will just go back and transition into G Harry, or if they'll do like a weird mix with like G and V at that point. And I think Pale Moon's in a really awkward spot because for the longest time, Pale Moon has been an absolute menace in the format. And now it's kind of being fizzled out a bit by a lot of the more aggressive decks in the format. So I think it's just going to depend on whether or not Harry can fully take advantage of it or not. Because if not, then Nightmare Dolls is still the better deck, and at which point it might as well not exist. So I don't think it's at that point yet, but we'll wait and see. Let's do Nubatama. So I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna say impactful. I'm gonna say impactful for one reason. Dominate is coming back in standard, and when that stuff comes out, it's gonna be even more disgusting. Depending on what the crest does, it's just gonna make Dominate even more threatening. And so I definitely see a world where it definitely helps out on the long run. I definitely think that Nubatama, especially since now they can just kind of turbo into their Rene Mizukage turn, essentially, by going on hit stride into it, and then go into the Mizukage Rene play on turn 4, regardless if they go first or second at that point. And I think that whole play is just downright disgusting. Like, being able to do that pretty much seemingly for free, almost. It's just kind of like, Jesus Christ, you know? So I think we're going to have to wait and see, like, how much more disgusting it gets with the Stride deck set coming up, but I definitely see this helping out Nubatama in a big, big way. I don't know if they'll go protect 1 or 2 in this situation, but I imagine they do protect 1 in most cases, just so that way they can survive their initial turns and then just kind of go unga bunga for there. But we'll wait to see what happens. Let's do... Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and get these guys out of the way. DI, Spikes, and Dimension Police. It's not helping them. It might as well not exist. Most of their VR support is already very solid, and I don't see a world where, unless some of these cards get hit in the future, where either of those clans will actually use their on-hit stride at all. I think it is... It just, especially when you have NLK, especially when you have Rising Nova, especially when you have Dieliner still, I don't see a world where you ever go into any of the on-hit strides. At least with Angel Feather, you can make the argument. It helps more than it hurts it, but with these clans in particular, it doesn't necessarily help them. It just makes them a lot worse, unless in Dimension Police's case, where it needs to be a little budgety. Where I think if you're going for the budget route, sure, but don't do it. Just afford the extra Dieliners, afford the Geomag glasses, and just build DP slowly at that point. Because it's going to be better off. You're going to be better off doing that than ever trying to make, you know, the on-hit stride work for DP. So, I think that's where we're at for that. Up next, let's do Bermuda. I think I'm going to put this at the bottom of impactful. And this is simply because, well, yes, it's very good. I think it also is going to be depending on what exactly it's able to do in the long run. Because, on one hand, sure. You could surge out Loris more effectively than you know, because you're going to be obviously taking this in Highlander. But at that point, I feel like a lot of people are coming to the consensus that Reindeer is still pretty solid on its own merit. But I definitely see a world where Loris is tacked in, specifically so that way you can do double forces and then just go Unga Bunga from there. And then go into Heltrana afterward. So, I guess it just depends. We'll see what happens, but I definitely think this... You know what, I'm going to actually put this on the top of has potential, because, it's in a really similar spot to Pale Moon, but not as much. Because, yes, you have Reindeer, but now you also have this option. And so I definitely think that it has some potential. It has a lot more potential than any of the other clans I've already put down here in this tier. So we'll just wait to see what happens. Let's do Neon Nectar. So, this is a tough one. I'm gonna put this right over here. Yeah, right there. So, Neon Nectar's biggest thing is that thanks to Katrina, like, it definitely helps. But I don't know if people are going to just convert back to Asha for that, on that point. Even though Cecilia Reverse can generate the same amount of markers if you high roll, and probably getting a little more advantage off of it. Like, if you give Cecilia Reverse enough Counterblast to go Unga Bunga, it really doesn't matter if you go into the on-hit stride or not. A lot of the time, Cecilia Reverse might actually sometimes be better in some circumstances. But, again, I guess that's just going to be dependent on whether or not you want to go the Asha route or if you want to just build Musketeers. If you're building Musketeers, don't bother. But if you're going specifically Asha route, I think it has some potential, but I think it's also going to depend on what people are going to prefer universally at that point. So, we'll wait to see what happens, more or less, is where I'm getting at. Genesis, might as well not exist. When Regalia is still one of the better decks for Genesis, yeah, no, don't even bother. It's just not worth it. I think Regalia going forward is still going to be the best Genesis deck of the format, simply because of the amount of restanding you'll do with your Vanguard, the amount of advantage you'll probably end up getting out of a large majority of the aero support. It's just going to be universally better, so don't bother with it. It's probably not worth it, unless for some odd reason they hit Regalia in the future, in which case then you may want to look back at it, but again, that's just my own personal take. Let's do... Is this Kagero? No, I think this might be Kagero. I'm gonna say, might as well not exist. Overlord of the Cross is still better, regardless of which version you go through, whether you do the End or the Rebirth. It's just universally better. Don't even bother. What is this one? I'm forgetting. Tachi's, Nuba's, Kagero, Murakumo. So, Murakumo, I think it has potential. I'm just going to put it like right over here. Has potential, just simply because, yes, you could generate 2 Excels and then combo off of the Shirayukis, which might have some impact, but I think, much like Tachi's, there isn't enough data out there to know, okay, this is definitely going to work. But I guess someone who's ever, interested in Murakumo, let me know in the comment section if you think that's actually going to work. If not, then I guess you could put it in might as well not exist if you are in your own personal take, but I think anything that will help, like, further your end goal of being able to just mess up the opponent with your Shirayuki play, I guess that helps out at that point. So we'll just wait to see what happens. Gear Chronicle. Yes, very impactful. I think this goes right next to Royals. The fact that they now can incorporate the crest. I mean, we already saw it in Japan where you can incorporate the crest with the Chrono Jets between both G and V. Kind of depending on your matchup, you can either do ride down shenanigans with the V Chrono Jet, or you could stay on G Chrono Jet and do time leap shenanigans off it. And universally, it's just insane the amount of advantage you'll be able to pull off that. So definitely very impactful. I think it speaks for itself at that point. Gold Paladin. Definitely. This goes even above this. Like, this is definitely impactful. Any deck that can sit there and generate 3 Excel markers on average on turn 3 is just downright annoying. Essentially, like, in comparison to all these other clans, Gold's definitely gets it better, because what you can do is, like I mentioned earlier in a previous video, you can ride Gurgit, go into your on-hit stride, from there you can call out Percival, and then get a 3rd Excel. And that in itself is really crazy. Like, I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that it's like, oh, well, yeah, but you could already do that with Liberator, technically. Kinda. Yes, but also, like, Jesus Christ. I mean, the amount of defensive value you'll still end up getting off of Gurgit's skill anyway, like, by that point you'll be GB2, so any defensive value you'll get off of Gurgit is, like, insane. So, I think in a lot of ways, longevity-wise, I think Gurgit has it better than Liberators. Even with, especially given the fact that they now have on-hit stride. But I guess I think it's going to depend universally on how people actually take that at face value. I definitely think that out of all the decks in the format that can, generate the most amount of advantage, this is definitely one of the clans that could definitely fully utilize the on-hit stride to its fullest potential, definitely. Mega Colony. I'm gonna say might as well not exist. I'm gonna put it somewhere around here. I don't think it's as bad as the other clans I've previously put in this tier, but I definitely think it's not gonna be noticeable. I think, yes, you can stall a bit, but then you're still gonna do Greydora anyway. And I think I don't want to rate it too highly, knowing potentially that they could potentially just hit Grade 4 Greydora and suddenly make this clan a lot worse than it actually is. And who knows, maybe they do that on purpose, so that way you have to go into the on-hit stride. I don't know, but I get that sneaky suspicion that they might hit Grade 4 Greydora at some point, because I think a lot of people are complaining, myself included, because I never liked the card to begin with. I think it just devaluizes, a lot. It just invalidates a lot of strategies, and enough to a point where if someone compared Grade 4 Greydora to Link Joker, I'd almost say it's practically just as bad. So, yeah, I think it helps it, but I don't know if it has the same amount of potential as some of the other clans I've already put on that list. So, I'm just gonna say, might as well not use it, Shadow Paladin. Another clan that you might as well not use. In fact, I'm just going to put it all the way over here, because V-Luar just does everything that the on-hit stride does, but better. If you want to do a cheeky Claret Sword build, then sure. And I think that's generally what people are going to try to do with it, if anything. But the amount of advantage that V-Luar could still perform, and that's before we even get any of the standard support coming up, at that point, just wait for the standard stuff and then see what that will do for you. And I think all of that combined will be a lot more worth it than anything that the on-hit strike can provide at this point. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Link Joker. So I'm going to say Link Joker goes somewhere around here. It's very impactful because Link Joker, specifically Chaos, has been tier 3 for a little bit, and then Messiah Deleter has been solid overall universally, but now there's an opportunity for Pure Messiah to make a huge comeback. Essentially, the idea that a lot of people are having is that you can go into Judgment, get 2 Messiahs face up, then you go into any of your other Messiah strides on turn 3. You either go Trans-Outs to stall, or you go the new Amnesty Messiah to multi-attack, or even go Basaltus Messiah, just so that way you can just draw a little bit extra. It doesn't matter at that point, and then immediately on turn 5 at that point you can go into your Integral, and you'll be surprised how easy it is once you get set up and once you get going, how easy it is to actually get that going. And for Pure Messiah builds in particular, I don't see a world where you actually use the Crest, because there are going to be a lot of instances where you actually need to be able to stall out a bit to actually go for your win con. And especially since Vogogoat is a thing in the deck where you can just, if you see it early enough and you start going Oonga Bunga with it, it has the potential to be very devastating. There's a lot of decks out there that kind of just die to it, and especially if you're able to do Vogogoat combos on turn 3 while your opponent's still stuck on grade 2, yeah, no, good luck. Especially if you go Force 2 with the deck, it's downright annoying. You combine that with Dunamis, yeah, no, your opponent is not doing much after a certain point. May not even get to a Integral if it comes down to that at that point, I see Deleter Messiah also tacking in the G alter egos just specifically for this. The marker generation where you'll do double Force 2s and then immediately go into your delete into Cosmic Dawn play on turn 4. And in general, it's very impactful for Link Joker. I definitely think you're going to start to see a lot of Link Joker outside of just like the very obvious like control builds like Chaos, this is definitely going to be very useful. I think this is going to open the floodgates for Link Joker to actually start becoming more of a presence in the meta than it has been in a very long time. Now we have Narukami, and you know what? I think this deserves its own tier. What did I just do? This deserves, we'll do, yeah, we'll do that. This deserves the bullshit tier. It gets its own tier. Any deck that, if it's going second, can generate GB4 on turn 3 while your opponent is still trying to actually play the game is downright unfair. It is more unfair than it has ever been, even when Stunverse was unlimited. Let me put this into perspective for those of you who are probably confused. So there's this play that a lot of people have been picking up on, where essentially you'll ride G Vanquisher, you'll go into Stunverse, and this is all assuming your opponent gave you the grade 3 turn and allowed you to go and just ditch for Stride regularly, and assuming that you're going second. Just keep this in mind. So let's say you ride Vanquisher, you go into your Stride, which in this case it's always going to be your Stunverse. You activate Stunverse so that way you go back down to a grade 3. Now you're at GB2 because you flipped up for Stunverse's effect. You now go into your on-hit Stride because you haven't generated any markers this turn. You go into your on-hit Stride. Your on-hit Stride creates double Excel 2s. Now you draw 2. Then you also potentially have full Bronto in the mix as well, depending on if they're actually going to hit full Bronto in the ban list coming up. After all of that, you also now, by that point, should have at least 2 G-Guards in hand, ready to go at that point. So you double G-Guard into double Impede, you're now at GB8, and now you can go for the GB8 play and fucking blow your opponent back on turn 4. That is bullshit. I don't care what you tell me, Narukami would have to get hit in the upcoming ban list for it to not be in its own tier. Because unlike Gold Paladin has to like commit to its actual turn and commit to it hard. While regardless if you go first or second, Narukami just sits there and goes unga bunga. Like, if they go first, they still generate 3 Excel markers on turn 3. They don't get to GB8 that fast, but regardless if you go first or second, you're fucked. If you go first against Narukami, they can go into the GB4 play. If you go second against it, they still have 3 Excel markers, and they can still do ridiculous shit at that point. Like, it is I just don't understand why Bushiroad thinks it was a good idea to allow this to even happen in the first place. I think this is primarily the reason why they just thought that full Bronto was enough to actually hit Narukami, but I'm starting to think that you would also have to hit Impede at the same time now, just because of that interaction. Because if you want Stunverse to actually still be legal at this point, you'd also have to just outright kill Impede at that point. I think that maybe hit it to 1 would be enough, but at the same time, I think it's just bullshit no matter what at that point. Because you're being able to turbo to your GB. If worst comes to worst, then at that point, you could just turbo into DRAGNOA at that point. And by that point, your opponent's not going to have a hand to actually survive any of that bullshit. DRAGNOA plus potentially 4 Excels at that point, like, you're fucking set. You're sitting nice and pretty. Assuming you even go that route and don't just go exterminate just to be a fucking cunt. Like, at that point, like, Narukami is in its own tier. I'm sorry. Say what you will about it, but I think Narukami just needs to get hit a little bit more before I think I can treat it fairly like every other clan in the format. But with the rant aside, that's going to do it for this tier list. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, because I'm just a little agitated, because it's like every time I feel like Narukami is fine in the metagame, suddenly they get something that allows them to be even more broken. And I wonder when it will be enough. But guys, let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do you think that I'm pretty much on point with all this, or do you think there's some things that can be adjusted based off of what you've tested? Let me know in the comment section, and until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.